going to genetic test your embryos? So this might be a really annoying answer. Curious if you tried other ways to conceive before IVF. This has actually been on my mind for so long. The rudest question you have ever been asked. Curious on the financial side of IVF doing multiple egg retrievals. I hope what I'm about to say does not offend. I think the outright rudest thing that somebody has said to me. Hello everybody, it is Dingle here and welcome back to my channel. I hope y'all are doing super duper well. We've got a new setup today. There is literally construction happening on the front part of my building, as well as the back part of my building, as well as the street to the side of the building. It's also in the 80 degrees today, so I don't want to close a window, but I'm just trying to find the best place where a construction worker won't be listening to me talk about infertility and eggs and sperm and all of that fun jazz that we love to talk about here. But hey, honestly, the worst that can happen is they might learn a thing or two. If you all are new here, hello, my name is Mac. My husband's name is Jack. Yes, Mac and Jack. We live in Portland, Maine, and we have been on our infertility journey going on 2.5 years now. It's been a wild ride. We've documented the whole thing, so I will leave the infertility playlist that we have in case you want to binge that down below. We've done 3 failed IUIs, and we just got done with our first ever IVF retrieval cycle. So if anything we talk about today resonates with you, or you would just love to cheer us on our road to baby, make sure to hit the subscribe button because I try to upload every single Wednesday and Sunday. With our first retrieval cycle officially behind us, I asked you all on my Instagram any IVF related questions you guys wanted me to answer, and I have to say I have never gotten so many questions submitted in my entire life. I stopped reading them very shortly after they started coming in, so I have not prepared myself for any of these questions, so this will be fresh for both you and I. I will be answering them in no particular order, and if I do not get to your question today, feel free to You guys, the construction noises, we're just gonna have to work with what we've got. Any family planning such as house hunting, do you plan to stay in Portland? And the short answer is yes to both of those. When Jack and I moved here in 2019, we signed a 12-month lease, and then after staying here for that long, we knew we wanted to sign again for at least 2 more years. So we signed another 24-month lease, thinking at that point we will definitely be ready to start house hunting, but as we know, the market is ridiculous. So we feel really lucky that we have time on our hands in a way. So we just actually talked to our landlord about staying in this apartment for another 12 months. That'll give us time to continue to save for a house, as well as for the market to hopefully calm down within the next year. I don't believe we will be buying in Portland, but there are a bunch of really family-friendly, great school system type of towns in and around Portland that we will be looking at. Ooh, it seems like I got this question a few times actually. Are you going to genetic test your embryos? And we are not, actually. And something that I forgot to say at the beginning before hopping into it that is very relatable to this question is I am answering all of these from our situation, our perspective, what we have chosen to do with this insane, crazy process that comes with 10,000 decisions that we have to make. So anything that I say, in no way do I want it to reflect on any of the decisions that you all are making. I don't want to influence any decisions that you all are making, because these are your decisions. This is your experience, this is your process, and these are your conversations that you're going to be having with your doctors and nurses. And on the flip side of that, these are our decisions that we have made together as a family, as well as with our doctors and nurses. So I would very much appreciate 0 criticism on any decisions or any medical advice in the comments. They will absolutely be deleted. Thank you so much. So genetic testing. No, we are not going to go ahead and do that. This is something that was very thought through. But given the many statistics that we have looked at, and also the fact that Jack and I personally got genetic testing done on us to make sure that we weren't carriers for anything that are common to be carriers of, if that makes sense, coupled with both of our ages, coupled with the advice from our doctors and nurses, we feel very comfortable with the fact that we are not genetic testing. But that might change in the future with other embryos that we get. yet, so I'm not gonna lock myself in on that, but that's what we have decided currently. Curious on the financial side of IVF doing multiple egg retrievals. Oh, that's a very good question. So if you missed it, we only got one embryo last time, but knowing the future that we want for our family, we wanted to spruce up the bank, so to speak, before we go ahead and transfer. But for the financial side of things, so this would be considered a new IVF cycle. Before we made this decision to immediately go into a new one though, it was really easy to check with my insurance that they have 2 IVF cycles that they'll cover within an insurance year, if that makes sense. So we already did one and we're gonna use our second one. Not to say that my insurance covers every single penny of this process, but they have helped with a big chunk. So to know that we are at least partially covered for this next one is very, very helpful. On a similar note, somebody asked how many rounds are there, which is super valid because honestly, I had the same question before I went into any of this. Basically, a round of IVF can include just the retrieval of your eggs in order to make embryos, and those can be put off to be frozen. So you've got little frozen bundles of cells kind of just chilling there until you want to use them. Or a cycle could be a retrieval right into a transfer. I like to think of IVF as a 2-part kind of process. One is making the embryos and the other is transferring them back into the woman's body in hopes for a pregnancy. So the number of rounds that you do is really a personal preference, and if it ended up working the first time versus not working, or how many embryos you got the first time. For us, since we only got one, like I was saying, it made sense for us to go into another retrieval process. But if we ended up getting 7 amazing embryos last time, we would not be doing another retrieval round at all this time. We would have gone straight into a frozen transfer if that had been the case. That's the only reason we're going straight into another round. Somebody asked, what was the worst part? Any tips or tricks to make the time pass more quickly while waiting? Oh, that's such a good question. So this might be a really annoying answer, but the worst part for everyone, what I have found by being part of this community online, is different for every single person. I've talked with women where the injections are the worst part for them, and honestly, the injections were one of the least worst parts for me. Some people said insurance was the worst part for them because honestly, why the heck do we have to worry about that when we're going through all of this stuff? And then some women had a really difficult time with the egg retrieval and just the emotions overall with the whole process. The worst part for me was the story and the things I was making up in my head in anticipation for everything that was unknown for me. I can confidently say going into this second one, my mentality is so different. It has improved so much from the last time. There's still some things that my anxiety likes to cling to for sure, but the fear of the unknown for me this last time was nearly debilitating. But now on the other side of it, I can confidently say it is not as bad as what I had in my head at all. And I was actually excited to go into a second retrieval with hopes of getting maybe a couple more embryos for us. My husband has been struggling coming to terms about possible IVF. Any advice? That is a tough one for sure. I keep changing up positions because I get uncomfortable on the bed. But I think in those situations, as cliche as it sounds, communication is so important. I think what's interesting is the first instinct we have as humans when we come into contact with someone who has a different opinion or is simply just not on the same page as us is to go into defense mode. And what Jack and I have found that has been so helpful in our relationship, we've been together for 12 years at this point, it's truly hearing the other person out, and that goes both ways. Having a sit-down conversation, maybe over a glass of wine, and getting to the conclusion of why he might be feeling that way, and also having him know it's really important for him to hear you out as well, will one, bring you all just closer together in general, but also I think that just hearing somebody out from their perspective, even if it's not where you were coming from initially, ultimately helps meet a middle ground. And I think that you all can both get to a point where you are comfortable heading into this decision. I hope that helped. What is something positive apart from your embryo, oh my little M baby, that you're taking from this journey? Oh my gosh. I'm struggling to answer this question question because weirdly there's so many good things. Not me like choking up on a Wednesday right now, like what the heck. There are so many positive and good things that I have taken from this so far, and it's not over by any means, that I did not expect to take from this. The first thing that comes to mind is that I didn't think that Jack and I could have gotten any closer in our relationship at all, but it has been truly amazing being able to support each other in something that is so emotionally and physically draining, and being able to be there for each other and joke with each other. And I have just not felt lonely from his presence in this entire process. That man is an absolute gem, and if I could clone him and give him to, no, that's weird, I wouldn't do that. But I just wish that everybody could find their Jack out there, because they are seriously the most incredible human beings that I've ever met. The second thing that always comes to mind is that it has softened me in a way. I felt like I was a pretty empathetic person before. Other people's feelings always affect mine. If someone is happy and excited, I'm happy and excited. If I see someone crying, I'm crying. But I think what I mean here is the realization that the person next to you in the grocery store line could have gotten the worst phone call of their entire lives up to that point, and we would never know. They could be struggling with something that we could not fathom, or struggling with something that we are also going through as well, and we just have absolutely no idea. So I have just found that overall I give people more grace. The third thing that I will say before moving on from this question is you all. I never in a million freaking years thought that I would feel this sense of community around something that so many women struggle with, and the amount of love and support and just stories shared with me in the comments as well as the DMs is so overwhelming. And I think the most touching thing that I have received through those messages is when somebody expresses that my videos have helped them in any sort of way. That is the most touching thing to me, because in a time where Jack and I felt so incredibly alone in this struggle, the most comforting thing in the world was watching and reading about other women's stories. And just being able to be part of that now myself for other people is the most rewarding thing ever. So I just want to thank you all for being here so much. Curious if you tried other ways to conceive before IVF, and if so, what? Yes, we tried 2 years of naturally trying. That's probably a smart ass answer, but it's true. And when you're naturally trying, women are trying a bunch of different things. Tracking ovulation, different supplements to take, Mucinex, as weird as that sounds, we gave that a shot. Pineapple, cranberry juice, like the whole 9 yards. When you're trying naturally, there are so many different things that seem to have worked for other women that we definitely tried, but at a certain point, we just needed help. After that, we did 3 IUIs, like I was saying, before moving on to IVF after that. Somebody asked if I could go through the basic schedule of it. Yes, I love schedules. I'm a big schedule fan. So with my clinic, as well as other clinics that I have seen, they usually have a week out of every month where they do egg retrievals. And you can imagine every woman's cycle starts at a different time. So basically, depending on when your cycle starts, when your period starts, you will then hop on the clinic train of either this month's egg retrieval or the next month's, depending on how you fell with the timing. But with our clinic, and again, I know a lot of other clinics do this, they put you on birth control in order to suppress your ovaries from ovulating and just getting your hormones and everything all balanced out before they go ahead and stimulate the crap out of them for your egg retrieval. So depending how many weeks before that week of retrieval that your clinic has, that your cycle started, they'll put you on birth control in order to then force a period. So in order to force a cycle start date. So that answer is a little vague. It could range from 3 weeks weeks to 6 weeks, I would say, of you on birth control. Then you have your cycle start after the birth control, and you get some baseline tests done to make sure everything looks good, no major cysts happening in the ovaries, etc. And then between, I want to say, 10 to 14 days is when you'll be on what they call stims. That's your stimulation medications. Those are the medications that are going to stimulate your ovaries to create as many follicles and eggs as possible. And then after that 10 to 14 days-ish, it does range depending on when your body is ready to be triggered. They trigger you, which gets your eggs all ready to be retrieved, and they schedule your retrieval date accordingly. If you're doing a fresh transfer, meaning you're not sending your embryos off to be frozen first, the transfer, I believe, will happen around day 5 of your embryo, when your embryo turns day 5, because it's fresh. If you've gone through a fresh transfer though, and I've got that completely wrong, please comment that down below. But since we opted for a frozen transfer, my nurse let us know that we can kind of pick any cycle we want, because they do transfers way more often than they do retrievals. So I don't have to be scheduled in and around like one single week of transfers necessarily. That'll more so go with my natural cycle more than an egg retrieval cycle goes. What does your support system outside Jack look like? Any advice for building one? I need to lay down and get comfy for this one. Like I said before, Jack has been the most incredible main support system that I could ever ask for. And then outside of that, you guys have seen through my videos how excited my parents get whenever we have news to share, or whenever I'm having a bad day, I know I can call them. And then I have my IRL friends who are scattered across the country, but they have been so sweet. They check in on me. They sent me the most tear-jerking package and card ever. It was just the sweetest thing ever. So I feel so supported in my IRL support system for sure. And because I love these people so much, I hope what I'm about to say does not offend them whatsoever, because they're amazing and they're doing everything perfectly, and there's literally nothing else that they could do, I promise. But I think we can all agree with any tough stuff that we go through, whether it's infertility or something completely different, there's nobody else that will understand what you are going through better than, one, yourself, but two, other people going through the exact same thing. So what I have found to be continuously helpful is finding other women online that are also going through infertility. I've loved watching the standard infertility-esque YouTube channels. Like, I love watching Ellie and Jared. One of my favorite content creators of all time, her name is JC Marie, also opened up about her infertility a little bit ago. And just seeing these women that I was already following opening up about infertility was just like awesome. But my favorite is actually TikTok. The infertility and TTC community on TikTok is just so awesome. I will leave some of my favorites linked down below. There are so many women that I have found on that app that are just ready to support each other. And since it's TikTok, they're constantly making videos of their ovulation tests, updates on their IUIs, 2-week wait, all of that stuff. And even though I'm not super active about my infertility journey on TikTok specifically, my thing is more so YouTube. I have loved getting to know these women through this app, as weird as that sounds. We comment on each other's stuff, we cheer each other on, and just being able to watch someone else dipping a stick into a cup of pee in order to see if they're peaking ovulation, as weird as that sounds, it has brought me so much comfort. So if you are needing that level of comfort, I highly recommend. Again, I will leave a few to get you started linked down below, because they're really awesome. Oh my gosh, okay, the rudest question you have ever been asked about infertility, and how have you dealt with it? Oh my gosh. This is a really great question, because this has actually been on my mind for so long, and I don't know if I have the right way to answer it quite yet, but I'll try here. I know that it is common in the TTC and infertility community to sort of poke fun at the stupid questions or the ignorant questions that people ask when it comes to trying to grow your family. And with what I'm about to say, I do not mean to invalidate the fact that these questions are incredibly frustrating, because I 1000% agree they are very frustrating. But for me personally, intent has always been the most important thing when it came to these questions. Do I love when people who don't know what I'm going through ask me when Jack and I are having children? No, I don't love it. But for me, it makes it easier to not get very angry at people if they ask that question, because if they knew, or if they had a reference to infertility, or if somebody in their family had gone through infertility, they probably wouldn't be asking that question. And I think that really helps me a lot when it comes to getting these standard annoying questions. After going through what we've been through, do I think that it's an okay question to ask? No, but it helps me give more grace to people for sure when I think of their intent. Did they intend to hurt me with this question? And 9.5 out of 10 times, no, they didn't, and that's really important to me. But with intent in mind, I think the outright rudest thing that somebody has said to me after opening up about our infertility is asking if I've tried eating a cheeseburger in order to up my chances of conception. I think anything about commenting on anybody's body is always the rudest thing that somebody can do. So that's the outright rudest one. But the other ones that have very much bothered me and have actually spun my anxiety out of control are questions about the medical decisions that my husband and I have made along the way. And that's not asking, you know, if we are genetically testing our embryos or if we're doing a fresh or frozen transfer. Like, not any questions that are seriously out of curiosity, but not that I think these people meant to spin me out of control and literally lose 24 hours of sleep. But along the way, we as a couple going through infertility are faced with so many decisions. Things and medications to try before we even go into IUI. During IUI, things to consider such as at-home ovulation tests versus monitoring. And with that monitoring, do we just want to do blood monitoring or do we want to do ultrasound plus blood monitoring? And then on top of that, how many IUIs do we want to do? What are we willing to do before we move on to measures such as IVF? And then when it gets into IVF, is there a fertility related diet that we want to try out? Different buzz foods that we want to introduce into our diets? Do we want to freeze all embryos or do a fresh transfer? For the embryos that we freeze and then we don't ultimately use, what do we want to do with those? Here are all of your options. Do you want to genetically test the embryos? Do you want to hatch the egg? Do you want to do ICSI? There are so many things, and I think the things that have really spun me out of control and ultimately caused the most damage are when people online have questioned the decisions that Jack and I have already made. As in, we shouldn't have done those, and here are the reasons why. Why would someone think that was helpful? That's the thing. I don't think they think that was helpful. There's no help that offers whatsoever. And in situations where you are never going to be sure if you made the right decision, those are the most damaging questions and comments that I could ever receive, or anybody going through something like this could ever receive. Because couples going through this have made those decisions based on their own beliefs, first of all. Those are a massive range in general. Their doctor's opinions, their nurse's opinions, the research that they have done, the questions that they've asked their doctors, like, a lot has gone into these decisions. And so for somebody to question something that you can't go back and reverse is incredibly damaging. You guys, there are so many other questions that I want to answer, and I know that I have already talked your ear off, so I'm gonna do a part 2 to this. That'll probably be Sunday's video. So if you're wondering if I'm gonna touch on something else or your question just wasn't answered here, those will probably be in Sunday's video. So if you're new and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, make sure to do so down below, because typically, again, I upload videos on Wednesdays and Sundays. Everybody, do not forget to give this video a big ol' thumbs up, and I'll catch you in the next one, my friends. I'll see you later. Bye.